The rain poured heavily, drumming against the university's pavement and drowning out the usual evening chatter. Ella hurried across campus, clutching her books to her chest as the storm soaked through her sweater. She hadn't anticipated the sudden downpour, and now she was drenched and shivering with no umbrella in sight. She spotted the awning outside the small cafe near the library and dashed toward it for shelter. Her hair clung to her face and her shoes squelched with every step. "You look like a wet kitten," a familiar voice said, startling her. Ella looked up to find Adam standing under the awning, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. His black hoodie was pulled over his head and his hands were tucked into his pockets. Despite the weather, he looked effortlessly calm, as if storms were just part of his routine. "Great," Ella muttered, trying to wring water out of her sweater. "Just what I needed. Commentary from you." Adam smirked and shrugged off his hoodie, handing it to her. "Here. You'll freeze." "I'm fine," she said stubbornly, though her teeth chattered. "Take it," he insisted, his tone soft but firm. Ella hesitated before accepting it, slipping the oversized hoodie over her head. It smelled faintly of rain and something else. Something comforting. "Thanks," she mumbled, pulling it tighter around herself. They stood in silence for a moment, the rain creating a rhythmic background. Ella stole a glance at Adam, who was staring out into the storm, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing out here anyway?" she asked. "Work ran late," he said simply. "Don't you ever take a break?" He chuckled dryly. "Not really an option." Ella frowned, but before she could press further, a clap of thunder startled her and she jumped. Adam turned toward her, his brows furrowing in concern. "Are you scared of storms?" "No," she lied, her voice a little too high. Adam smirked but didn't tease her. Instead, he leaned against the wall and said, "You can stay here until it passes. You'll be safe." Ella looked at him, her heart doing that annoying fluttering thing it always did when he was near. "Thanks," she said softly. Another flash of lightning lit up the sky, and she couldn't help but notice how the light caught the sharp angles of his face, making him look almost unreal. "Why are you always so kind to me?" she blurted out before she could stop herself. Adam turned to her, surprised. "Kind? I'm not sure anyone's ever called me that." "Well, you are," she insisted. "Even when I'm a complete mess, you're steady." Adam's gaze softened and for a moment he didn't respond. Then he said quietly, "You're not a mess, Ella. You're different." Her breath hitched and she stared at him, unsure what to say. The rain continued to pour, but it felt like the world had gone still. "I don't let people in," Adam admitted, his voice low. "It's easier that way. But with you, I don't know. It's different." Ella's heart raced and she felt her cheeks heat despite the cold. "Adam." He looked at her, his dark eyes searching hers. "You're not like the others, Ella. You see me, not just the version everyone else sees. And that scares me." "I scare you?" she asked, almost laughing. "Yeah," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Ella felt like she couldn't breathe. She started, but another clap of thunder interrupted her. She flinched and Adam instinctively stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "It's okay," he said softly. She looked up at him, their faces just inches apart. Her pulse quickened and she wondered if he could hear it. The storm raged on around them, but in that moment, it felt like they were in their own world. Ella wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Adam broke the silence. "You should head back once the rain lets up. It's late." She nodded, her voice caught in her throat. As the rain began to slow, Adam stepped out from under the awning, the storm's remnants dripping off his shoulders. He glanced back at her, his hoodie still draped over her frame. "Keep it," he said before walking away, disappearing into the night. Ella watched him go, her heart full and aching all at once. She touched the hoodie, a faint smile playing on her lips. For the first time she allowed herself to hope just a little, that maybe, just maybe, Adam felt the same way she did. Dating Adam was nothing like Ella had imagined it would be. She had pictured quiet strolls on campus, sharing coffee on rainy afternoons and secret smiles across lecture halls. In reality, their relationship was far more complicated, filled with stolen moments and unspoken challenges. It had started one late evening under the same awning where they'd shared their first vulnerable conversation. Adam had found her waiting there, the hoodie he'd lent her still tucked under her arm. "I like you, Adam," she'd confessed, her voice trembling but resolute. "And I know this won't be easy, but I'm willing to try. If you'll have me." He'd looked at her, torn between disbelief and cautious hope. "Oh, are you sure? You don't understand how hard this could be." She'd nodded, her timid nature momentarily giving way to her fierce determination. "I've never been more sure of anything." And so it began. Ella kept their relationship a secret at first, partly because she wasn't ready to face the judgment and partly because she wanted to hold on to something that felt hers. Adam, too, wasn't one for grand displays. He valued privacy, especially when he felt like their worlds were too far apart. But their time together wasn't without its challenges. Adam's job at the cafe, combined with his shifts at the library and late-night tutoring sessions, left him exhausted most days. His grandmother's health had worsened and he was juggling hospital visits on top of everything else. He tried his best to make time for Ella, but more often than not he'd miss plans or show up late, apologizing profusely. One evening they'd planned to meet at the university amphitheater for a small music showcase. Ella had been looking forward to it all week, imagining sitting beside Adam and holding his hand while the music played. But as the event started, she sat alone, her phone silent. Her roommate Lily appeared beside her, leaning in with a sympathetic look. "He's not coming, is he?" Ella shook her head, biting her lip to keep from crying. "You know, there are other guys out there," Lily said gently. "Guys who treat you better. You don't have to settle for someone who can't even show up." "I'm not settling," Ella said, her voice small but firm. "Ella, you're gorgeous, smart, and from the Montgomery family. Do you know how many guys would kill for a chance with you?" Ella turned to Lily, her cheeks flushing. "I don't care about any of that. I don't want anyone else. I love Adam." Lily sighed but didn't argue further. Later that night, Ella found Adam waiting outside her dorm. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes and guilt etched across his face. "I'm sorry," he said before she could speak. "I wanted to be there but I couldn't leave work. The hospital bills are piling up and—" "Adam," she interrupted, her voice breaking. "Do you know how much it hurt to sit there alone? I understand you have responsibilities, but sometimes it feels like I'm not even a priority." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "You are a priority, Ella. You're the only thing that keeps me going some days. But my life, it's not like yours. I don't have the luxury of putting everything else on hold." Her shoulders slumped and tears welled up in her eyes. "I know that. I do. But it doesn't make it any easier." For a moment they stood in silence, the weight of their worlds pressing down on them. "I'm trying," Adam said softly. "I don't want to lose you." Ella took a shaky breath, her heart aching at the vulnerability in his voice. "I don't want to lose you either. But you have to let me in, Adam. I want to help. I want to be part of your life, not just someone you fit into the cracks." Adam reached for her hand, his touch warm despite the cold night. "I'll do better. I promise." The weeks that followed were a mix of highs and lows. Ella tried to support Adam in any way she could, even if it meant sitting with him while he studied late into the night or bringing him food when he was too busy to eat. She kept her timid nature in check, pushing herself to be strong for him. But the whispers on campus didn't stop. "Why is he with her?" girls would say. "He could have anyone. She's too shy, too plain. He deserves better." Ella overheard these comments more often than she liked, and while she tried to brush them off, they gnawed at her insecurities. One afternoon she walked into the library and froze at the sight of a stunning girl leaning against Adam's table, laughing at something he'd said. Ella didn't recognize her, but the girl was undeniably beautiful, confident in a way Ella could never be. For a moment, Ella considered walking away, but Adam caught her eye. His face softened immediately and he waved her over. The other girl turned to look at Ella, her smile faltering as she stepped back. Ella, Adam said, standing up. What are you doing here? I was just bringing you this, she said, holding out a small bag of snacks. Adam's expression warmed. Thank you. The girl glanced between them, her lips curving into a knowing smirk. I'll see you around, Adam. As she walked away, Ella's shoulders slumped. You okay? Adam asked, noticing her sudden change in mood. Ella hesitated before nodding. Yeah. Just tired. He studied her for a moment before pulling her into a quiet corner. Don't do that. Do what? Pretend you're fine when you're not. Ella looked down, her voice trembling. Sometimes I feel like I'm not enough for you. Adam's brows furrowed and he cupped her face gently, forcing her to meet his gaze. Ella, you're the only one I see. The only one I care about. Don't ever doubt that. Her heart swelled at his words and she leaned into his touch, her eyes closing as she whispered, I love you, Adam. For the first time he smiled. Truly smiled. I love you too, Ella. And I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. In that moment, despite the challenges they faced, Ella knew she'd never love anyone else. Adam was her person and she was his, no matter what the world thought. Adam had always been a man of resolve. The kind who turned every setback into a stepping stone, every sleepless night into another tick on his list of goals. It was no surprise to anyone when he completed his coursework a semester early, earning the admiration of professors and peers alike. But Adam didn't celebrate, he didn't have time. Between his first office job, paying off hospital bills, and ensuring his grandmother had her medication, he was already struggling. Ella, meanwhile, was quietly counting down to her birthday. She knew better than to expect a grand celebration. Adam couldn't afford the luxury of big gestures. But it didn't matter to her. She just wanted to spend the day with him, to be near him. The day of her birthday, Ella showed up unannounced at Adam's tiny rented room. She stood outside the creaky door for a moment, hesitating. She'd never seen where he lived and she wasn't sure what to expect. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly. Adam opened the door, his face lighting up in surprise when he saw her. Ella, what are you doing here? It's my birthday, she said with a shy smile, holding up a small cake box she'd brought with her. His expression softened, but there was a hint of guilt in his eyes. Oh, I didn't forget, I swear. I just didn't. She cut him off by stepping inside, placing the cake on his small, cluttered desk. You don't have to explain. I just wanted to see you. The room was modest to say the least. A single bed pushed against the wall, a small wardrobe and a desk crammed with papers and a laptop. It was nothing like the luxurious home she'd grown up in, but she didn't care. Don't look around too much, Adam said with a self-deprecating laugh. It's not exactly glamorous. It's perfect, she said sincerely, turning to face him. He looked at her, a mix of awe and disbelief. You're not disgusted? Disgusted, she repeated, stepping closer. Adam, this is your space. It's part of you. How could I ever be disgusted by it? Her words silenced him. She reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. I wanted to spend my birthday with you, she said softly. Nothing else matters. He pulled her into an embrace, holding her tightly. You deserve so much more, Ella. I have everything I need right here, she whispered. That night, under the dim light of his desk lamp, Ella gave herself to Adam completely, her love for him evident in every touch, every whispered word. He held her like she was the most precious thing in the world, but afterward, as she slept in his arms, he stared at the ceiling, guilt gnawing at him. Adam couldn't shake the feeling that he was depriving Ella of the life she deserved. She came from a world of luxury and privilege, yet here she was choosing him, a man who barely had enough to his name. His insecurities deepened when Ella's parents found out about their relationship. The Montegos had always been protective of their daughter, but learning she was in love with a boy from such a modest background infuriated them. Her father, Charles Montego, was especially enraged. He summoned Ella to their estate, his face a mask of controlled anger as she walked into his study. Explain, he demanded, holding up a photo of her and Adam, clearly taken by someone spying on them. Dad, I love him, Ella said firmly, her timid demeanor overshadowed by her determination. Love? Charles scoffed. Do you even know what you're saying? That boy has nothing to offer you. He's dragging you down, Ella. He's not dragging me down, she argued. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Her mother tried to reason with her, pleading for her to end things, but Ella stood her ground. When threats of cutting her off financially didn't work, Charles took matters into his own hands. A week later, Adam was coming out of his office building, tired from a long day, when he found Charles Montego waiting for him. Adam, Charles said coolly, stepping in front of him. Adam froze, recognizing him immediately. Mr. Montego. We need to talk. Charles didn't waste time with pleasantries. He made it clear that he disapproved of the relationship and offered Adam a large sum of money to walk away from Ella. Adam's jaw tightened. I'm not with Ella for her money. I don't want anything from you. Then do it for her, Charles said sharply. You think you're helping her, but you're not. You're holding her back. If you really love her, you'll let her go. Adam's chest tightened. He had always feared that he wasn't good enough for Ella, and now her father's words hammered that doubt home. I'll think about it, Adam said quietly before walking away. That night, Adam sat in his room, torn between his love for Ella and the nagging voice in his head telling him she'd be better off without him. When Ella called, he hesitated before answering. Hey, she said cheerfully. Can I come over? Ella, maybe you shouldn't, he said, his voice strained. Why not? Because... He trailed off, struggling to find the words. Because I don't want to hurt you. You're not hurting me, Adam, she said firmly. You're the one thing in my life that feels right. Her words brought him to the brink of tears. I don't deserve you, he whispered. And I don't care, she said fiercely. I love you, Adam. And I'm not giving up on us. His resolve broke and he told her everything. Her father's visit, the offer, his doubts. Let them think what they want, Ella said after a long pause. We'll prove them wrong. Adam felt a glimmer of hope. For the first time in his life, someone wasn't abandoning him. Someone was choosing him, flaws and all. Their relationship didn't get any easier. The whispers on campus grew louder, her parents refused to back down, and Adam's workload only increased. But through it all, Ella stayed by his side, her love unwavering. For Adam, she was a light in his otherwise dark world. And for Ella, he was the anchor she'd always needed. Together they faced every challenge, determined to hold on to the love that had brought them together against all odds.